Hello everyone! Welcome to something new that I'm doing. I'm DTM, and with CYL 5 about to be revealed and out for us all to play with, I figured it would be fun to take a look back and look at the previous CYL winners and their units and take a retrospective on how they impacted the game, their place in competitive modes, and how they were perceived. And I thought it'd be fun to make a tier list right now to see how well some of these units have aged. Obviously, half of them have gotten refines and half of them hasn't, but for consistency's sake, I think I'll be ranking them as they are standing now. But I will definitely talk about how they were, for their entirety of their life, especially if they were meta impactful, for instance, when they were released and such. And I thought it would just be a fun time to take a trip back down memory lane and see how far we've gone, because we've definitely gone far, especially this year. But anyways, let's get started with our first unit on the list, and that is Bike. So Brave Ike. So at launch, he was the original winner, I believe. And I don't have the complete context since I did start playing late August 2019. But to my knowledge, pre-refined, he wasn't generally that impactful, since his weapon means that you really couldn't run distant counter, since you wanted to be hit consecutively to get the 80% damage reduction on the second consecutive hit. And it just seems really awkward to use, and there just generally wasn't really a place for him. But post-refine, he is one of the most powerful tanks, especially when that refine came out, especially with Brave Lucina. Those two would literally just steamroll everything. And I know from experience, I have had Bike and Brave Lucina carry me, even as late as April of this year in the Vault of Heavens. It is that insane how good he is. And by April, Dual Leaf was already everywhere, so he's still good. But unfortunately, obviously, with Dual Leaf and Legendary Sigurds and other very powerful reds, he did sort of fall off, so I wouldn't say he's S tier anymore, but he is definitely still A rank right now. So it's great to see how far he's gone, especially with his refine. So I put him in A because even though there are a lot of powerful reds, he is still super strong. And just as a, I guess, sort of heads up, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I'll mainly be ranking these out of how much is it worth it to run these units compared to other options. Like, what value do they provide? How well do they perform versus other options? And so yeah, Ike is still A tier. Next we have Brave Lynn, and I mean, she was by far the best CYL1 unit before the refines, and I think you have to understand that Sakei's Blessing was super god tier, because this was before no counter disrupt. So she would terrorize all the lance, sword, axe units. It'll just be wild. But unfortunately, she got by far the worst CYL1 refine. There's no question about it. And she could still be viable due to the nature of being a range cav. You can run Fire Sweep, Poison Strike, but then she would be basically the same as any other range cav, and there was not really much worth to running that. If you want to have what makes her unique, you'd probably want to have Brave, you probably want to have like Sake's Blessing. And honestly, it didn't used to matter that you wanted to prevent beasts from countering you, but now it really matters with Fallen Edelgard. So unfortunately, she likes really dropped off. But again, she's still very potent because of the fact that she's a range cav, but honestly, there's just better options. So I would say that she is in C tier. Again, being very carried by that range cav class, so to speak. Alright, moving on to Brave Roy. I think someone at IS really hates Roy because, like, all versions of him are like clowns, unfortunately. I am so sorry to all the Roy fans out there. But, like, I mean, before Eliwood got that Blazing Durandal from Weapon Evolution, he might have been decent, but, like, there's absolutely no reason to use Roy over Eliwood. And, I mean, in vacuum, especially with, like, Safety Fence, he's super good, would be, with like Gale Force or Hit and Run on offense. And obviously on defense, we have like the classic Lunge Eliwood. But like, there's a reason I call it Lunge Gale Force Eliwood. He's completely taken over by his father. There's just no reason to use him. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Eliwood even has higher speed, especially if you get his Resplendent. So yeah, that's a big oof for Roy. Unfortunately, has to be in a D tier, but who knows? Maybe someone at IS could finally throw him a bone. But yeah, that is really sad. Alright, next up we have Brave Lucina, and if you asked me like 2 weeks ago, Brave Lucina would be instant S tier by far. But with the Breath Seal, it is a bit more tricky. But before we go into that, let's go into like the history. Pre-Refine, Brave Lucina wasn't really anything special, I would say. Probably considered the worst CYL 1 unit. And once M. Corrin got his Yato Refine, like, she got completely outclassed by male Corrin. But post-Refine, she instantly became one of, if not the best support in the entire game. Like, the amount of builds that require Brave Lucina to work is insane. And obviously we have the super potent combo with Brave Ike, but there are many others. For instance, one, especially with the Mystic Boost Seal, one of the classic bread and butter builds is to have Bonfire with a slaying weapon and have Mystic Boost Seal, and then basically on enemy phase, after an enemy attacks you, you can immediately retaliate with Bonfire, and you still get healing through Mystic Boost. And that is honestly off the rockers. Like, the only unit that comes close to Brave Lucina's support was essentially Flame. Like, sure, we had NY Valoria and Dual Hilda, I guess, but those are more limited, and I'd still say the buffs she provides besides Breath still makes her better than those options. With Steady Breath Seal, though, Brave Lucina definitely lost a lot of her uniqueness. However, and this may be biased, but I don't think so. I still think Brave Lucina belongs in S tier for two reasons. One, flyer, calves, and physical ranged units like Norn can't use Breath Seals. So for those units, Brave Lucina is still required for a lot of those builds. And secondly, having Brave Lucina still opens up so many options. Like, for instance, I mentioned the Mystic Boost Seal with Bonfire, or you want solo skills. And obviously it's not as important as before, but I would still say it's pretty incredible and meta impactful, definitely. So personally, I would still rank Lucina in S, but honestly, I have trouble deciding between the two. Honestly, it could go either way. I'm just going to put her in S because, again, honestly, Steady Breath Seal is still kind of new, so we probably have to wait and see if she truly belongs in A. But I know what definitely does not belong in A, and that is Brave Hector. But before we get to Maltet Man, pre-refined Brave Hector was okay, I guess. I mean, at the time, he suffered from armor weakness and limited movement, especially for a unit that wasn't as optimized. But so he didn't really like have a presence in either Aether Raids or Arena, really, except for maybe Arena when he got released due to nature of having armor BST. But with his Refine though, he is by far the best tank in the game. Like, there is just no question. And then Save Skills came along and he became even a better tank. His Refine was just so overtuned, it's honestly disgusting. Like, just a standard Special Fighter Mystic Boost Bonfire build will carry you in Aether Raids for like 90% of your matches in Vault. It's actually really insane. And I don't think there needs to be any discussion on this. He is like S tier. Like, Maltet Refined so overtuned, especially with Ostian Pulse. Ostian counter, sorry. There's just, yeah, no way. So yeah, instant S. Next we have Brave Celica. And so from the onset, on release, she was cursed to compete with the infinite amount of other Red Sword infantries in the game. And from what I can tell, Celica didn't exactly offer anything unique to stand out. I mean, she did have like the special cooldown, but not having Slaying really limited that. With a Refine though, now she grants special cooldown -1 and restores 7 HP, which is honestly really good for Gale Force builds. And it's super reliable too. And now with Safety Fence, Gale Force and Hidden Run are now extremely valuable. And I think the thing to mention and emphasize is that the special cooldown charge of -1 is just very, very consistent to allow Gale Force. And the main challenge of Gale Force is consistency, because you have to make sure you are able to get the procs, you meet the attack or speed checks, the enemy doesn't have guard. Celica just makes it so much easier to use Gale Force and makes it more consistent. I wouldn't say she's S tier, but I definitely say she has her place, especially in Aether Raids. So I would say she's A tier for now. Not as good as Spike, I would say. What are you doing? Brave Hector over there. Get over there. Not as good as Ike, but I would say A tier. I guess you could make the argument for B tier, but I think her special unique ability, a special cooldown plus a special charge and the healing, makes her A. But that's just my opinion. And yeah, next up we have Brave Ephraim. So Brave Ephraim was honestly pretty meh on release. Like, being a green armor immediately causes issues with movement, pre-save skills, and being a green axe armor, there's like a lot of competition for green axe armor. And his effect wasn't really that great to impact the meta that much. Like, I believe it was just that you get a guaranteed follow-up if you have a bonus to yourself. And yeah, if a bonus, you basically make a guaranteed follow-up attack. And that was it. And guaranteed follow-up is good, but that's like the sole condition on like Garm. And yeah. And obviously this could be blocked by no follow-up and effects that like impacts, for example. But now with post-refine, well, I still don't think it will impact the meta, but it's definitely improved a lot. Like, having the half of no follow-up to guarantee his own follow-up allows him to be a very powerful tank, and getting through those impact skills. And now with save skills, armors in general got a huge buff to protect their allies, and Ephraim is no exception, but I don't think he's the best by any means. Like, he faces competition from Gustav, Brave Edelgard, and right now green is not so great of a color to be in right now for Ether Raids. So, unfortunately, I think he'll still be in B tier, unfortunately. So yeah, that's Brave Ephraim. Next up, we have Brave Veronica, who I think no one would complain is probably the best CYL2 unit on release. And like, just being a staff with a preference weapon carried her so much, and the buffs and debuffs she provides to her allies was very helpful. And honestly, it's unparalleled, because even now, like, staff calves have a huge place in the meta. At least for ARD. And her Refine, while probably the most tame one in CYL2, still allows her to support her allies even further. And honestly, even now, she's still one of the best staff calves out there in the game. Like, the only competition, really, is Elise or, like, young La Rochelle, I feel, for staff calves. And yeah, that said, I don't think she is S tier, especially now with safety fence. And honestly, you can probably do good with just a merged up 4-star staff calf like Forest with Palm Staff, and still pretty much get the same effect. And obviously, young La Rochelle is just insane. So I think Veronica belongs in A tier. Probably better than Celica, just due to her versatility as a staff calf. But yeah, I think this is appropriate. So yeah, Brave Alm. Brave Alm. Let's talk about Brave Alm. Brave Alm was underwhelming at release, and he's still underwhelming. Sense scale is like so bad of an A skill, and being a red sword infantry, there's so much competition, especially from someone with not that great attacker speed, especially these days. And his perf weapon does nothing to help him. And I mean, I don't think this is controversial at all, but like, he's definitely D tier. Sorry, Alm fans, but I definitely do hope that he gets a good refine, like Brave Hector did, and just shoots up in viability. I would just love that. But for now, unfortunately, it's D tier. Yeah, sad days for Alm fans. But next we have Brave Micaiah. So Brave Micaiah was either the best or second best CYL3 unit on release. At the time, I'd say her armor nuking capabilities were very good, and Yune's Whispers was very good at debuffing. But like, these days, you can generally just run like Tamari or other global debuffs, and it could generally get the job done. Especially with like both Plumeria, Camilla having like sabotages. And unfortunately, her weapon, while still being pretty good, I don't think it's enough to make up for being a flyer. Since being a flyer really hurts due to lack of infantry skill access and bow weakness. And she can't run null counter disrupt or other infantry skills, and she's physically frail with like middling speed, which is not exactly that great. Like, I think OG Micaiah, especially with her Resplendent version, is super good now, like better than Brave Micaiah. And honestly feeling a resurgence, especially with the Cav-dominated meta of Ether Raids right now. So, which unfortunately Brave Micaiah can't exactly replicate, again, due to being a flyer, since, you know, bow calves are everywhere. And yeah, unfortunately, Brave Micaiah will have to be C, probably above Lyn. But yeah, Brave Micaiah is sort of fallen off, I'd say. Not completely, like head of C is still pretty respectable, and I still use Brave Micaiah, but yeah, I think C is the appropriate place to be. And now we have Brave Eliwood, and now if anyone is excited to get their refine, it's definitely him. But unfortunately right now, he doesn't really have any special mechanics going on besides just effective against dragons and beasts, and +4 to all stats if you initiate combat, which doesn't really exactly make him stand out. And unfortunately right now, he doesn't really have a place in either Ether Raids or Arena. But, it would be super interested in, I would be really interested in what his refine could be. Because, like, if he gets, like, no follow-up in his weapon, he would be, like, a fallen Edelgard killer, for sure. And that would be very exciting. But for now, I'd say he's probably C tier. Probably, I mean, within ranks doesn't really matter, so I'll just put Eliwood here. Anyways, Brave Camilla, like Micaiah, was considered either the best or the second best CYL3 unit. I personally would say she's aged the best, mainly due to being a staff unit with a preference weapon. And pre-vault, like, her with restore traps was very, very potent. And gravity is just so amazing as a penalty to inflict on your enemies. And now with safety fence, she's even better on offense too, with hit and run with the safety fence. And it's sort of like a lesser legendary Claude in that aspect, but you can use her outside of Earth Season now. Unfortunately, like, being a staff, she doesn't exactly have the greatest killing power to be able to do those hit and run plays, but I'd still say it's super respectable, and she's probably a B tier because gravity is so good now, and yeah, and honestly, being a healer with a perf is still good. And on defense, you can run like odd or even recovery as a staff, and gravity is super good on defense as well, which is why I think Elise is one of the better staff calves. But anyways, yeah, I'd say Brave Camilla is definitely in B. Alright, and now we get to CYL 4, and we have Brave Dimitri, and oh man, the fandom has definitely overrated you on release. Like, I am so sorry, Brave Dimitri fans, you didn't deserve this. I mean, at least you have Legendary Dimitri. Okay, so let's talk. 18 res. Actually so atrocious. Like, any respectable mage, or even just Reinhardt, should just delete him from the game. And sure, he has his defense-based damage reduction, but unfortunately that doesn't really help him. What he really needed was, like, no follow-up, or, like, speed-based damage reduction. But unfortunately, his speed right now, it doesn't really cut it to avoid getting doubled by mages. And especially now with Not, getting full value from defense-based damage reductions is harder. I mean, it's still pretty easy, but, like, in order to get the full effect of his B skill, you have to stack defense, which is not as good as stacking speed, because again, you're going to just get doubled, and that will just lead to death if you have 18 res. And so stacking defense is not a good defensive action, surprisingly, at least for a damage reduction skill, especially if you just have 18 res. I mean, I wouldn't say he's as bad as Brave Alm or Roy, but since you can at least salvage him to be a okay tank, but that's only because he's more modern and has, like, modern stats. So I would say Brave Dimitri is in C tier. Probably last in C tier. Yeah. Sad days for Dimitri fans, unfortunately. But meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, we have Brave Edelgard, which is probably one of the best green axe tanks in the game. Like, she is so min-maxed and has, like, better movement than infantry units. Guaranteed follow-up is super good on Black Eagle Rule, and the 80% damage reduction is just, it's not necessary, but it's the icing on the cake. And I would say she's definitely the best CYL4 unit right now, no question, and has definitely aged the best. Although again, unfortunately, green isn't that good of a color to be in AR, but Arena, like, she actually has modern BST, so she could score really well in Arena, and that extra movement in Arena is so valuable due to the metagame. Honestly, I struggle here between S or A, but honestly, I think I go with S. On the low end of S, just because of that movement in arena is just so good. And like helps so much. And obviously in Aether Rage, she's still a very powerful tank. It's just that dual lifts are like everywhere, so she can struggle against those. Alright, speaking of which, we have Brave Claude, which is a super unique unit, and I thought he would age the best with his like healing effect, especially in AR, when you can get like a huge buff to your HP. Claude just becomes ridiculously bulky. The only way to really stop him was basically with either guard effects, wind sweeps, or one-shots. One-shots which are really hard to do, and even then, guard could be overcome by just supporting him with Brave Lucina, for example, which you still need to do since he can't run Steady Breath Seal. Unfortunately, there is one skill that completely shuts him down, at least for enemy phasing, and that is Fatal Smoke. And normally one skill on one seasonal 5-star unit wouldn't be that damaging to a unit viability, but unfortunately that happened to be on like the most meta influential single banner in a long time. And we even got free tickets, and the Valentine's banner, just like, it's insane how meta influential it was. But because of that, dual lift is literally everywhere. And now Legendary Sigurd is also everywhere with Fatal Smoke. And yeah, that just completely shuts him down from his like special effects. Despite this, I still say he's fairly decent, and can hold on pretty well. Even in Vault, like I think Promise Me One Thing still runs Brave Claude to really good effect. So I definitely put him in a B tier. Definitely not A, but definitely, you know, he could still hold his own. And now we have Brave Lysithea. So apparently IS hates red units, because once again, we have a red mage, which is a very competitive class, and on release, Brave Lysithea was honestly less consistent than her OG version. Relying on being damaged left her not really of a place to use her, because you couldn't really use her on ARD, and on ARO, she was honestly too frail to be a ranged tank, and wasn't as good as, say, a ranged cav for hit and run or anything. With Winter Burnie, though, that helped a lot, though obviously being a seasonal unit makes that option very limited. But I would say she aged well, just a little bit, in that she can nuke Fallen Edelgard, which, you know, is super valuable, even though I think you shouldn't really see Fallen Edelgard on defense that much, especially since most players in Vault have capabilities to deal with that. But honestly, it's unfortunate that she shares a very competitive class, and like sharing with dual lift or even her OG version, I mean, I'd say it's still respectable, so I'd put her in C tier, I would say. And yeah, I think that about covers my retrospective and ranking on the current CYL units. Again, these are all my opinions. I base these on what I feel, what they provide versus other options. And so, obviously, there are some things that could be changed, and honestly that I still debate, like Brave Lucina, Brave Edelgard, Brave Dimitri, yeah. But I think overall, this would be my list of CYU units. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that. Let me know what your rankings are. What would you change to this list, and let me know why, because I always love listening to other people's opinions on unit viability and stuff like that. And yeah, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that jazz to help support the channel. And yeah, sort of scuffed that, but you know, it's alright. And yeah, let me know what you think, and see you all next time. Hope you all enjoyed this new thing I did. Hopefully it helps. See you all.